Welcome to this week's Fireside Chat from Kincardine United Church and recorded in my kitchen with this kitschy fire on the wall behind me. It's good to be back with you after a week of holiday, especially since I have been able to reconnect with Judy Zarubik, who is making the technology work so smoothly on the other side of the screen. Thank you, Judy. While I was on holiday, I spent a fair bit of time catching up on my housework. Then I had a revelation. Of course, because it was my holiday, I spent some time in my lazy boy chair watching TV. For some inhabitants of their recliners, a lifestyle change may have resulted. Now, this chicken gives us a new interpretation of Psalm 3. The pandemic has had a terrible effect on our children. Online and hybrid forms of school have affected their learning, although not their creativity. In fact, our children's sleep patterns have been affected too. During the winter, while cooped up together, family relationships have become stressed. Even marriage counselors are stumped. As well, the pandemic has limited elective surgeries. So maybe we are well advised to keep limber and flexible. With our church building still being closed, some have found replacement places of worship. I must admit that I enjoy a cup of takeout coffee every morning. Although we don't have a Starbucks in town, we do have some wonderful coffee shops, both chain outlets as well as local mom and pop restaurants. I've always found it interesting to look around at a coffee shop to see the variety of people who find community there. It's not much different than this video from the TV show This Hour Has 22 Minutes.
Hey Canada, Tim Hortons hockey trading cards are back. Featuring Team Canada, collect them all while supplies last. And introducing Tim Hortons trading cards, featuring the people who work at and go to Tim Hortons. Collect them all, including a table of retired old men talking about how bad the snow clearing is. A guy who always has a free muffin even when they don't make those cups anymore. Lady who's been in line for ages but still doesn't know what she wants when it's her turn to order. Construction worker buying 19 coffees for his entire crew. Guy outside smoking the dirt. Bikers trying to look tough while drinking double doubles in the parking lot. The one plain donut left at close. That damn lid! The broken speaker. Desperate politicians trying to appeal to everyday Canadians. And the guy who started working at Tim's in high school and always thought he'd move on, but no, he's still here. Tim Hortons trading cards. Collect them all. You won't want to, but you're here so much, you will anyway.
While that video humorously pokes fun at all of us, too often we find ourselves accepting other people's perceptions of us, resulting in feeling inferior. Instead, I would suggest that this pandemic encourages us to love ourselves, even with our quirks and foibles. After all, God loves us for who we are and for whom we are becoming each day. If I say to you, no, you are not, behind in life, too awkward to be around, difficult to love, too broken to heal, too old for your dreams, destined to be alone, a failure or a disappointment, too dumb to learn new things. Instead, what better time than the present to celebrate our strengths? Instead of internalizing the negative perceptions of others, consider your gifts so that you can love yourself. We need to love ourselves because once we love ourselves, we can more easily love those around us. Loving ourselves establishes the foundation upon which to build our ability to love others. Then we can learn to create a positive space for others when we talk. For example, instead of saying, keep a stiff upper lip, let's say, I can see you're hurting. Instead of saying, it's for the best, let's say, wow, that's really hard. Instead of saying, I know how you feel, let's say, how are you really feeling? Instead of saying this terrible phrase, God doesn't give you more than you can handle, let's say, can I pray for you? Instead of saying, it's God's will, let's say, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Instead of saying you should do blank, let's say, I don't know what to say. How can I help? Instead of saying, you'll get over this in no time, let's say, give yourself time to heal. Instead of saying, you'll be fine, let's say, I'm here for you. By changing the way we respond to each other, we help to create a positive listening space for healthy relationships. We are paying attention without trying to lazily rely on old bromides that dismiss the other person or their worries, their concerns, and their dilemmas. Let me tell you a story that took place in 2007 in Washington, D.C. at a metro station on a cold January morning. A man with a violin played 6 Bach pieces for about 45 minutes. During that time, approximately 2,000 people went through the station, most of them on their way to work. Some people noticed him after a while, pausing for a moment, then hustling back into their busy lives. Some dropped a coin or two in the musician's hat, but never stayed to listen. One little boy stopped to listen, rapt and entranced, but his mother quickly pulled him along on their journey. After 45 minutes of playing, the hat contained $32 when the musician had finished. No one knew this, but the violinist was Joshua Bell, one of the greatest musicians in the world. He played one of the most intricate pieces ever written on a violin worth $3.5 million. 2 days before, Joshua was featured in a concert where the seats averaged $100 to listen to the same music. In the hurly-burly of our lives, presented with something extraordinary in a commonplace environment, do we perceive what amazing beauty is there? In fact, how many other things are we missing as we rush through life? It is easy to be distracted when we are overwhelmed by emotions, stirred up by life that just doesn't seem to be unfolding the way we want. Indeed, you cannot see your reflection in boiling water. Similarly, you cannot see the truth in a state of anger. However, when the water is calm, clarity comes. So how might we find this place of calm and of clarity to appreciate wonder in life? Sometimes you just need to talk about something, not to get sympathy or help, but just to kill its power by allowing the truth of things to hit the air. Maybe you talk with a person you trust most. Perhaps you spend time in prayer or in meditation. In those moments of safe space, we find our perspective on life, discovering how to work for the well-being of both ourselves and others. I want to share with you a poem titled Breathe, written by Becky Hemsley in her book, Talking to the Wild. It demonstrates the kinds of insight contemplation can provide. She sat back and they said she was shy. She led from the front and they hated her pride. They asked her advice and then questioned her guidance. They branded her loud and then were shocked by her silence. When she shared no ambition, they said it was sad. So she told them her dreams and they said she was mad. They told her they'd listen, then covered their ears and gave her a hug whilst they laughed at their fears. And she listened to all of it, thinking she should be the girl they told her as best as she could. But one day she asked what was best for herself instead of trying to please everyone else. So she walked to the forest and stood with the trees. She heard the wind whisper and dance with the leaves, and she spoke to the willow, the elm, and the pine, and she told them what she'd been told time after time. She told them she never felt nearly enough. She was either too little or far, far too much, too loud or too quiet, too fierce or too weak, too wise or too foolish, too bold or too meek. Then she found a small clearing surrounded by firs, and she stopped and she heard what the trees said to her. And she sat there for hours, not wanting to leave, for the forest said nothing. It just let her breathe. Notice self-talk, like that revealed in the poem, doesn't celebrate our strengths. Instead, such internalized criticism demeans our behavior, leading to injustice. It separates us into two groups, those on the inside and those on the margins. Instead, Christ calls us to seek justice. To drive home the point, here's a story about the difference between law and justice. The law professor walked into the class, pointed to a student in the front row, and demanded his name. "My name is Nelson," he replied. "Get out of my class," ordered the instructor, "and never come back." Confused, the student packed his stuff and stumbled out of class. Everyone looked around, scared and outraged, but silent. The professor nodded and asked, "What are laws for?" looking around in challenge. Some answered despite their fear and confusion, "To have order in our society." "No," was the response. "So that people pay for their actions?" said another. "No," the professor thundered. Looking around, he asked, "Does anyone know the answer?" A tentative, near whisper emerged. "For justice to be done?" "Finally," exclaimed the instructor, "justice. But what is justice?" The students were getting angry, answering with more courage. "To protect the rights of people," said one. "To differentiate good from bad and to reward those who do good," offered another. The professor nodded and asked, "Did I act correctly when I kicked Nelson out of the class?" Silence, for they were all afraid to answer. "I want a unanimous answer," he demanded. In one voice, the students answered, "No." Quietly, the professor asked, "Why has nobody done anything about it? Why do we have laws and rules if we don't have the will to practice them? Each of you is obliged to speak up when you witness an injustice. All of you. Don't ever stay quiet again." He paused and smiled. "Now go and get Nelson. After all, he is your real professor. I teach a different class." When we love ourselves, we love one another. When we find our voice, we raise our voices for our neighbors experiencing injustice. When we are afraid, we find our strength in God's nurture, similar to what this video affirms.
There's so much sorrow here, so much shame and hurt and fear. And this grief feels like the ache is never ending. The night is long, can't find sleep. Where's peace gone? It's so hard to breathe. It's time to dream fierce dreams, like Mary did. Brave dreams, like Joseph did. New dreams, like Jesus did. 'Cause those who dream change everything. Those who dream change everything. Don't have the words to pray. No comfort, no joy today. Where is love? We long to see a new beginning. The night is long, can't find sleep. Where's peace gone? It's so hard to breathe. It's time to dream fierce dreams, like Mary did. Brave dreams, like Joseph did. New dreams, like Jesus did. 'Cause those who dream change everything. Those who dream change everything. Seeds grow in the dark. Hope's born in the dark. Dreams start in the dark. So don't give up. Don't give up. It's time to live fierce dreams, like Mary did. Brave dreams, like Joseph did. New dreams, like Jesus did. 'Cause those who dream change everything. Those who dream change everything. Change everything.
We know we are both fractured, yet we're made for wholeness. At the center is God's love for us, and by extension, our love for ourselves and for our neighbors. So let's dream as we join together, as I share the words of Art Solomon, Ojibwe elder and author of the book, Song for the People. Grandfather, look at our brokenness. We are the ones who are divided, and we are the ones who must come back together to worship and walk in a sacred way, that by our affirmation, we must heal the earth and each other. Amen. I want to thank Terry Boyd and David Skinner, who upload these fireside chats to our YouTube channel. Every week, they ensure that you have these recordings to trigger your own spiritual engagement. I want to end our time together with this reflection from the late author Richard Wagamese from his book Embers, one Ojibwe's Meditations. It is love itself that brings us together. This human family we are part of, this singular voice that is the accumulation of all voices, raised together in praise of all creation. This one heartbeat, this one drum, this one immaculate love that put us here together so that we could learn its primary teaching, that love is the energy of creation, that it takes love to create love. I pray that you discover the same love both for yourselves and for others, finding healing and hope within that discovery as you dream. Until next week, goodbye.